Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyanan Ganashlakya Chakshurumalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So thank you very much for allowing me to say some words for my purification. Krishna Chandra Prabhu had contacted me a couple of days ago. And as you know, we've all been in lockdown, so we've had a lot of chance to do some reading. And I thought then this is a wonderful opportunity to share what I've been reading recently. Of course, now here in the Waikato, we're back to level 2, so we're slowly getting out there and doing some Sankirtan and meeting the people again, albeit with a lot of caution, because everyone's very frightened to get too close to each other for obvious reasons. But in any case, somehow or other, book distribution is going on and the preaching is going on. So he asked me to speak about the glories of Narada Muni, I guess in relationship to the Damodar Kartik month. So I thought I would speak about Narada Muni in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and if we have some time, the Bhagavatam Rita. So the glories of Narada Muni. Well, the glories of Narada Muni is that he's always singing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the ancient astronaut. He travels from within all the 3 worlds, expounding the glories of Supreme Personality, his form, name, qualities, and pastimes. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it said, Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kavabir iditam kalmashapaham shravana mangalam Srimad Atatam bhuvi grinanti he buridha jana. This verse was spoken by Maharaj Prataparudra to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his ecstasy. He aroused him in his ecstasy. And when he heard this verse from Maharaj Prataparudra, immediately Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Prataparudra Maharaj. This verse is from the 10th canto, Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam, that the nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul for those suffering in this material world. Kavabir itidam kalmashapaham. This glories of the Lord. It's propounded by the kavis, by the saintly people, and destroys all the sinful activities, the sinful reactions of whomever who hears them. Shavada Mangalam, and also becomes auspicious, Srimad Atatam, and is full of great power, spiritual power. And Bhuvi Gridanti Ye Buridha Jana. Whoever spreads this kata, Krishna kata, to others is Bhuvi Grinanti He Buridha Jana. The Bhagavatam expounds that they are the most munificent. So Sri Narada Muni is the most munificent because wherever he goes, wherever he is, he's always absorbed in Hare Nama Nukirtanam. He's always absorbed in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Person, not just to himself, but to everyone that he meets. And this is very much the mood of Srila Prabhupada and the mood of our ISKCON, is that we're always going, sharing this knowledge of Krishna consciousness to whomever we go, whomever we meet, as instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Yare deke tare ka Krishna upadesh, Amara Guru Ohana Tora Edesh. So Narada Muni, he doesn't discriminate. We see specifically here in the pastime, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the end of where Damodar Krishna was bound. He was sitting there, tied up to the grinding mortar. The acharyas were thinking, they were saying, previous acharyas, that what was Krishna thinking in this specific moment? Krishna was thinking, my mother had not sufficiently fed me. She had gone away to do something else in the kitchen. So I created havoc, broke the pot of yogurt, and then she chastises me, and she ties me up with this wooden grinding mortar. But now I'm going to show her, I'm going to do something even more mischievous. Krishna glancing at the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj, he sees the two Arjuna trees. At this point in the Bhagavatam, it's explained the history of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. As most of us know, Nalakuvara and Manigriva are the two sons of the demigod Kuvera, who were also devotees of Lord Shiva. So they were given so much benediction, so much boon, for so much material wealth and opulence, because Kuvera is the demigod of wealth. Lord Shiva gave them the benediction that they could reside in his abode. So Manigriva and Nalakuvara, they were in the Mandakini Ganga in Lord Shiva's abode, enjoying with the Apsara ladies. It's described in the Bhagavatam. These ladies weren't ordinary ladies. Their bodies were cooling in the summer and warming in the winter. So they were enjoying sense gratification like anything in the Mandakini Ganga. But Krishna had arranged it for these two brothers to get the association of Narada Muni. So Narada Muni comes. And what did Nalakuvara and Manigriva do? And the intoxication of their sense gratification, they couldn't recognize Narada Muni's presence. Although all the ladies had left the Ganga to dress themselves, they couldn't recognize that they had a saintly person in their midst. So therefore, as most of you know, the story goes, Narada Muni cursed Nalakuvara and Manigriva for their arrogant behavior. This is what happens when people are immersed in sense gratification. As Queen Kunti explains in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, Janmaishvara Shutashibir Aidaman Madapuman. People are become mad after good birth, Aishvarya, opulence, good learning, and of course, personal beauty. And Aidaman Madapuman, they become intoxicated by the pride. So that's what sense gratification does to the conditioned souls. It intoxicates you with pride. You can't see, we can't value saintly persons. And I meet so many people like that as I try and distribute books. And they will blatantly say, my life is a good life. My life is a very valuable life. My life is very significant. I value my life. Some people will say like that. Or at the same time, I ask them, sometimes in my exchanges, I ask them, you're working so hard. You're stressing out. You're practically in anxiety sometimes, some of these people. But what are you doing it for? What are you actually living your life for? What are you working so hard for? And they come up with all kinds of extraordinary answers. Some of them will say, oh, I live for my job. I live to make money. I live for the animals. I live for the species, the endangered species, or I live for the ecology. Or I live to go surfing. I live for my car, or I live from one party to another party. And I can see that even though some of them have some good intentions without any hardcore definitive knowledge about who they are or who Krishna is, they have all kinds of interesting notions of what they're meant to be doing with a very short human form of life. So without meeting persons like Narada Muni, people don't understand the real significance and value to their life, even though they say, oh yes, my life is so significant and it's so valuable. Like I met this one guy outside the countdown recently. He was saying, yeah, I have a good life. I've got a significant life. I value my life. At the same time, he was carrying a 24 bottles of Waikato draft and a whole bunch of sausages. Like this. If people don't have any significant knowledge about who they are, real transcendental knowledge, the apparent value of their life is very sad. And therefore it said, Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam. Actually, the nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul for those suffering in this material. These persons, without any access to Krishna Katha, knowledge about Krishna's name, qualities, forms, and pastimes, the Shastra says that their tongues are like deserts, their hearts are barren. All they're talking about and all they're engaged in is sense gratification, and they put themselves up in a platform of artificial significance. Yes, I am so and so, I am like this, I am like that. And this pride that comes from sense gratification is totally bewildering. Just like when someone's intoxicated, just like Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they're intoxicated, they can't see what is what. And they can't recognize the value that they have in terms of their association with Narada Muni. So Narada Muni, munificent as he is, and he knew that Krishna had arranged this whole situation. He cursed Nalakuvara and Manigriva to take birth as the two twin Arjuna trees in Nanda Maharaj's courtyard. And as the pastime rolls, Krishna, to make Narada Muni even more glorious, because Narada Muni had promised that after being encaged in these trees for 100 years of the demigods, you will become liberated by getting the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So to make the words of his pure devotee true, Damodar Krishna ensured in walking towards the twin Arjuna trees with the intention of pulling them down. In the previous acharas, they explained that actually the rope that was tied around Damodar Krishna and the mortar were also living entities. They were alive. And there's some very colorful renditions by His Holiness Sri Brahmaswami in his book, Sri Damodar Janani, how Krishna is playing with the rope and the mortar as he walks towards the twin Arjuna trees. And they were all cooperating with Krishna because the rope and the mortar actually knew Krishna's intention. So the mortar jammed itself between the two trees, and Krishna started pulling on the rope, tugging on the rope. Now the mortar knew Krishna's intention because the mortar is alive, it's conscious, living entity. The mortar, empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was pushing so hard the twin Arjuna trees that the rope slackened because the mortar didn't want Krishna to feel any pain by pulling the rope himself. So then the mortar was actually pushing the trees so hard that the rope slackened. Krishna was amazed, and then all of a sudden, with a great thunderclap, these two twin Arjuna trees crashed down, and from both the trees emerged Nalakuvara and Manigriva, in full regalia of the demigods, all decorated with the accoutrements and dress of the demigods. And they were amazed to see their Lord, Damodar Krishna. Krishna was just playing with the mortar and the rope, while Manigriva and Nalakuvara were paying their obeisances. They were smearing their face in the dust of Vrindavan. And then they got up and immediately they recited these wonderful prayers that you can see in the Srimad Bhagavatam. What was Krishna doing when the demigods were reciting these prayers? Krishna was just amusing himself. He was just entertaining himself with the rope and the mortar. He was flicking the rope, the previous acharyas say, and he was smiling to himself as the demigods were serenading their wonderful prayers. And what was Krishna thinking? The previous acharyas say that these demigods are worshiping me as their supreme Lord, but I'm a bound up Lord. I'm tied to this grinding mortar. And he's musing, he's laughing at himself, you know. These prayers of the demigods, as great as they are, cannot compare to the chastisement of Sri Yashoda, Yashoda Mata. That is more sweeter to me than the prayers of the demigods. And Krishna could see that Nalakuvara and Manigriva were getting a little bit nervous because they couldn't really tell whether Krishna was pleased with the prayers that they were giving him. Especially when Krishna started to laugh slightly at himself because he knew that the demigods were getting a little bit anxious. It's a little bit like in the Brahma Vimohana Leela, you know, when Lord Brahma came and he was reciting the prayers to Krishna. Krishna was Gambira, it's explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was so grave that Lord Brahma couldn't understand the mind of Krishna as he was reciting his prayers. He became fearful. So in the same way, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they were becoming fearful because not that Krishna was Gambira, but he was in the Hasya Rasa. He was actually making a joke out of the situation. He was laughing to himself. So they were becoming afraid. Why is Krishna laughing at our prayers? And so Krishna could understand this. You know, this is Krishna's personalism. He was very kind to Nalakuvara and Manigriva. So he gave both the demigods a very warming smile, recognizing that, yes, I accept your prayers, but now you must go. Chalo, you have to go. You have to leave this now. You're destroying the sweetness, the pastimes of what's happening here in Vrindavan. So he told them to leave. So immediately the demigods, they paid their obeisances and they left. And Krishna then further ensured the pastimes carry on. So these wonderful pastimes are there and they're made accessible for everyone and anyone in Kali Yuga. And I was just thinking like, wow, I was just distributing like so many Krishna books just last year. We had this massive Krishna book marathon. And people have this access, not just to any literature, but they have access to Srimad Bhagavatam. And not just the Bhagavatam, but the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the cream, the condensed cream of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone has access to it. They can have it. And furthermore, it's got Srila Prabhupada's purports, which also is like a safety net for us as we read Krishna's pastimes in the Krishna book. This is one of the books I've been reading recently in the lockdown. For the umpteenth time I've read the Krishna book. And I'm just thinking, what are people thinking when they have this book? I put it in their hands sometimes to see this picture of Krishna and Radha, and they look at the pictures. They don't understand that the significance and the value, but it's like giving a child a diamond, a jewel. But it's amazing. Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam. The Shastra says that they have the cure for all their suffering just by hearing these wonderful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their desert-like heart can become soothed. So it's very fulfilling. Srila Prabhupada explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that actually we should all follow in the footsteps of Sri Narada Muni. We should become Sparshimana, touchstone, and that a Vaishnav is recognized by how many other Vaishnavas that they have made or make. And how do we do that? Srila Prabhupada explains in the Madhya Leela that simply just one chants their rounds and follow the 4 regular principles. And then one is considered the Vaishnav. If someone does those things, then their speech, their speaking to the conditioned souls will take effect. Of course, there's different gradations of purity. Srila Prabhupada explains in the Nectar of Devotion that when a pure devotee speaks, it injects spiritual enlightenment. It injects spiritual enthusiasm into the hearts of the hearers. So when we're distributing these books or distributing knowledge of Krishna consciousness, especially Srila Prabhupada's books, that's the most direct way. It's like, well, people have access to Paramahamsa's ecstasies, which is Srila Prabhupada's purpose, and their access to Krishna's pastimes. And it's their ticket to be free from all suffering. And people are suffering like anything. Sometimes it's difficult to see how much people are suffering if the conditioned soul wants to enjoy or envious towards the materialists, or we want to enjoy what they have. But by reading regularly Srila Prabhupada's books and seeing things through the eyes of Srila Prabhupada's books, what people are living their lives for is very, very sad. So everyone should have access, everyone should have opportunity to have their own, so we say, personal revolution. Anyone in the human form of life can have access and should understand who they are and who Krishna is, and this way reinvent their whole idea of who they are and how to live in this world. And without meeting sadhus, the devotees, then these people will never get a chance. Kaviraj Goswami explains, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoy Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Prema Janme Teno Puna Mukhya Anga. Kaviraj Goswami explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoy, the root cause of bhakti is sadhu sangha. It's the association of devotees. And even if one has attained very high levels of Krishna consciousness, Krishna prema janma tena puna mukhya anga, still mukhya anga, it's a very important limb, the association of devotees. So without the devotees magnanimously trying to give themselves to the fallen conditioned souls, they'll never get any access. They'll never get any significant knowledge about who they are and who Krishna is. Brahmanda Brahmiti Kona Bhagavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Pasare Boy Bhakti Lata Beach. The living entity is just bouncing from different planetary systems and different species of life. But without meeting a sadhu, then there's no chance. So this is what Narada Muni does wherever he goes. Tavakatamritam tapta jivadam kavabir itatam kalma shapaham. He's giving everyone the opportunity to hear and chant about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Haranama Nukirtanam. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is also a very wonderful pastime of Sri Narada Muni, and where Narada ji comes and to the Prayag, the confluence of the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati. There, as Narada Muni is strolling in the forest near the Prayag, he sees a deer that's writhing in agony because it was half killed. And then further on, he sees a boar who's also writhing in agony because of it being half killed. And then a rabbit in the same situation. And not far from that place, he sees a hunter with reddish coppery eyes and dark complexion. The hunter looked like the superintendent of death, Yamaraj himself, with his bow and arrow ready to shoot another animal. So immediately Narada Muni, out of compassion, said to the hunter, "What are you doing?" And the hunter immediately could recognize that this person is a saintly person. And you can hear the conversation in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Narada Muni is asking the hunter, "Why are you half killing these animals? Don't you understand that this is a sinful activity?" Because the hunter could hear from Narada Muni, he took his words seriously. Narada Muni told him, "You should stop this activity immediately, otherwise you will be destined to take birth in very precarious situations." So the hunter, by the association of Narada Muni, understood, oh, maybe this isn't the right thing I should be doing. So Narada Muni said, well, you should just break your bow. You should go home, give all your wealth to the brahmanas, plant a tulsi sapling by the river, and chant the holy names of the Lord. And this is what the hunter did. By the association of Narada Muni, the hunter became a very great devotee. And as most of us know the pastime, when the Narada Muni came back to meet his disciple, the hunter couldn't even pay obeisances. As he was trying to pay obeisances, he was sweeping the ants off the ground because he didn't want to crush the ants like this. And Narada Muni was so pleased. Just see. Narada Muni also came with another sage. The other sage was glorifying Narada Muni. You're Sparshamani. You're just like a touchstone. You've made this very fallen rascal, very topmost Vaishnava. So this is the business of the devotees. One of the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava is that they are very magnanimous. They're very charitable. And we don't give people just any kind of charity, because there's charities for all kinds of things. I remember when I was in the UK almost 20 years ago, there it's a very charitable culture. And they have all kinds of charities for people on the street, buy them a beer like this, or the ducks in the park, or the stray dogs that run around the city. There's all kinds of charities. But not that we're against anything about charities. Of course, we want people to be charitable, but we have the greatest charity, and that we have access to knowledge that can actually create a revolution in the lives of people. And that's what people really need these days. It's just like, ignorance is so thick, you can almost cut it with a knife, like you can cut a piece of paneer with a knife. Ignorance is very thick, especially in places where there's so much material opulence. People are very much bewildered by that material opulence. Janmaishva Shuta Shri. And they can't see that their activities are causing them so much tribulation and so much anxiety, unless and until, and save and except, they meet a representative of Narada Muni, and a representative of the Parampara. So these are some thoughts I had anyway, considering the glories of Narada Muni. Narada Muni himself previously, before he became Narada Muni, was just a son of a maidservant in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And by the association of the Bhakti Vedantas, great Vaishnavas, he got the mercy to become empowered as he is now. And we all got the mercy of the Vaishnava at some point in our life, whether at this life or a previous life. At some point, we have some connection with a devotee that gave us the mercy. So this is the program of Narada Muni. And Bhagavatam, we also see the wonderful qualities of Narada Muni as he traverses throughout the universe, beginning from the planet Earth. And his intention was to find the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy. And fast forward, when he came to the end of the first canto of the Bhagavatam, the Lord was very pleased with Narada Muni for reminding him of all the wonderful relationships he has, and all the different kinds of devotees in the universe. And so the Lord wanted to give Narada Muni a boon. And what was the boon that Narada Muni asked for? One of my favorite verses in the Bhagavatam. Payam payam braja jagana prema vapi maralan Shriman Namamritam Mabritam Gokulabdi Utitam Te Tat Vishat Charita Nikarojim Britam Mishtam Mishtam Sarva Lokan Jagati Ramayan Matachesto Brahmani. Narada Muni asked for two things. The first thing he asked for, O swan gliding in the lakes of the Vrajabasi's love. As I wander everywhere, may I always chant and hear the nectar of your holy names. These holy names arise from the ocean of Gokul and expand the unlimited glories of your different ways of dressing and acting. Vaisha Charita Nikarojim Bitamishta Mishtam. Each one of Krishna's names corresponds to how he dresses, Vaisha Charita, and how he acts. And the sweetest of all names come from Gokul or Goloka Vrindavan. Vaisha Charita Nikarojim Bitamishta Mishtam Sarva Lokan Jagati Ramaya Matuchestu Brahmani. And that as I wander everywhere like a madman, I just bring joy to all the living entities in the three worlds. My Lord, if you're going to give me any benediction, first give me this. Let me just wander throughout the three worlds like a madman and bring joy to everyone and whoever I meet. So this is the glories of Sri Narada Muni. He just wants to give what people need the most. And really, people just need a little, just some kindness, some real significant kindness in this material world. When I meet people, they're so anxious and stressed out sometimes that all they need is just a smile a lot of the times. Hey, how's it going? You know, to remind them that actually there's hope in this world. Sometimes they're so blinded by their pride and sense gratification, they may not appreciate our attempts to try and give them Krishna consciousness. But everyone just needs a little bit of kindness. You can see their faces. You know, they've become so dry like a raisin, you know, especially as conditioned souls become older, you know, they're really trying to screw some kind of juice in the material for them, you know, from the material body and from the bodies of others. And even the ripe old age where they should really be thinking about their next lives, they're still engaged in so much sinful activity, and they're trying to dress themselves up like they're 21 or something like that. It's very sad, you know. Some old men and some old ladies, they try to dress up like they're like 21 or 18. Horrible. So they just need a little bit of kindness. You can see that living a life of selfishness has just sapped all the luster from their faces. They look like raisins, you know. That's what a life of selfishness portends. It's like, you know, you can't be happy, you know, always thinking about yourself as number one. And indeed, this is the day's culture. The selfie culture, where everything revolves around me, and the young people, all about me. And and when they realize that the world isn't revolving around them, they become very fearful and anxious. Hold on a minute. I try to enjoy and control the world according to the way I want it to move, but it's moving a different way. So what do I do? You know, just like this whole COVID scenario, people are just more than ever perplexed. I just want to enjoy the material world. I just want to enjoy this material body. But all of a sudden, this world is just moving the opposite way to the way I want it to move. So immediately people are like, oh, what's going on? Actually, it's very ripe time for trying to give people some transcendental knowledge. They become curious. Oh, you have some books on enlightenment. So this is the glories, Narada Muni. Wherever I go, acting like a madman, may I just bring joy to everyone in the three worlds. This was the first benediction he wanted to get from Krishna in the end of the first canto of the Bhagavatam. And then the second benediction, he asked that Whoever hears of your pastimes, specifically the pastimes in Vrindavan, and they hear it with great conviction, in other words, krita di, with great attention and faith from the authority of whom they're hearing it from, then please may you grant them pure devotional service unto your lotus feet. And what was Krishna's response? At the end of Bria Bhagavatam Rita, he puts his right hand up, signifying, yes, because you had asked it, my dear devotee, it shall be granted. So there you have it. We have access to knowledge and literature that can change the lives of these poor people and also myself. The benefit goes both ways. But yeah, we have access to knowledge that can create a revolution in so many levels in the lives of these poor people. And when you see them, especially if they take the books or they do some service and they appreciate Srila Prabhupada's books, it's such a satisfying feeling that to think that I know for certain that Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara are pleased by doing this activity, by engaging in this most magnanimous activity. Srila Prabhupada once said, you know, what is so great about our Krishna consciousness movement? And his answer was that actually it engages everyone, all people, irrespective of race, caste, creed, or color, in 24/7 devotional service. And then when people get that opportunity to do devotional service, what to speak about, appreciate the devotional service, appreciate the books, appreciate Srila Prabhupada's purports. There's nothing quite tasty for the consciousness, for the heart, especially when people come along and they take up to chanting Hare Krishna, whether they stay or not, that's up to them, but we're just doing our humble part. I guess the reason I'm just saying all this is because now we're coming to the Srila Prabhupada marathon time. Traditionally speaking, in ISKCON, the December time was a time when everyone in the whole world is very busy trying to give Krishna consciousness to others in the shape of Srila Prabhupada's books. And it creates such auspiciousness in the ether. Lord Chaitanya arranges things in such a way that people take these books and some people will become devotees. So this is the wonderful inheritance that we have gotten from the parampara. So Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Narada Muni can also be said to be our original guru, because Narada Muni is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva is the spiritual master of our parampara. So there you have it. It's a inheritance. It's a parampara inheritance. It's what we do. We share Krishna consciousness with others, and this is how we make our Krishna conscious career live, full of life and gusto. When we try and become selfless, trying to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So I was just like in reading the end of the Krishna book for the umpteenth time. I just finished the Krishna book a couple of weeks ago. And I was just contemplating on what Srila Prabhupada had said in the last 2 pages of the Krishna book. There he's actually, and anyone can read this, expressing his concern and heartfelt desire of how to resolve a very interesting problem. And what is that problem? That problem is that Shukadeva Goswami says in the 2nd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that one should leave their house, leave their home, leave their families. If they want to become Krishna conscious, should leave, and they should go to the forest and just hear and chant about Krishna. Just like what Prahlad Maharaj said to Hiranyakashipu. Tidvatmapatam gram andakupam vanam gatoya dharam ashrayeta. Vanam gatoya dharam ashrayeta. You should go to the forest. Srila Prabhupada translates it as going to Vrindavan and hear and chant about Krishna there. So how do we do that? You know, I mean, we can't just expect that everyone just leave their families and go to the forest or the bush to hear and chant about Krishna. On the one hand, there's that very piercing instruction of Shukadeva Goswami. On the other hand, the danger is that neophyte devotees may take that to heart and prematurely apply Shukadeva Goswami's instructions and take things cheaply. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had spoken about this also, that by the end of the turn of the 19th century, that Vaishnavism would have sunk into a very low repute because of certain persons taking to bhajan in a premature way like this. And of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would speak very strongly against it. So Srila Prabhupada talks about this in the last 2 pages of the Krishna book. We have this interesting problem. Shukadeva Goswami says we should all go to the forest, chant and hear about Krishna. But at the same time, on the other hand, well, the danger is, well, then we could become taking things too cheaply. So what does that mean? We just forget everything? We shouldn't. Krishna consciousness is not practical. Only very few people can go and live in the bush, become a mendicant. And on the other hand, the danger is that, well, you know, we could take things too cheaply. So there seems to be a fine line here. And Prabhupada even quotes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's poem, Dushtamana tumere kesha Vaishnava patishta thare nirjanara ghare tava harinam kevala kaitava. He says, my dear mind, what kind of Vaishnava are you? Simply for cheap adoration and distinction, you're sitting here pretending to chant Hare Krishna. But this is Kevala Kaitava. This is the cheating process. And how does he resolve this issue? The very last paragraph of Krishna book, he talks about Rishikesh. Krishna is the master of the senses. And our senses should just be all engaged in Krishna's service. And this is the wonderful thing that Srila Prabhupada had given us within this ISKCON, and that 24/7, how to engage our senses for Krishna's service, how to think about Krishna, eat for Krishna, sleep for Krishna, work for Krishna, do everything for Krishna. Yet karoshi, yet ashnash, yet jehoshi dadas, yet the pashashi kontia, mat krusha mat arpanam. And by engaging in this 24/7 service program from morning to evening, our senses can become purified. Sarvapadi vinik muktam tatparathaina nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchate. But why one engages in devotional service, one becomes free from these upadis, these bodily designations, and one becomes purified. Of course, when one becomes purified, then we can understand Krishna for who he really is. Bhaktya shakya ham evam vedarjuna gyatum jastum chatpena praveshtum cha prantapa. Only by undivided devotional service can I be understood, O Krishna, and this is the only way you can enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So Srila Prabhupada resolves this. You can't run off to the bush, to the forest, to the Waitakeries and become a mendicant. You can't just leave your families. But rather, he gives us a 24/7 program of full immersion in Krishna consciousness. He says, in many letters, actually, I've inherited my spiritual master's anxiety, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So many persons, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was on the planet, so many persons were misappropriating bhakti. We're taking it cheaply, and we're just hearing and chanting in seclusion in the holy dhams without being specifically qualified to do so, and they had become debauchees to some extent. So, Srila Prabhupada fixed this by giving everyone full immersion on 24/7, engaging all our senses for Krishna's service, to purify the senses. Atashi Krishna namadi na bhavit gram indre seva mukhi jivada swayam evas murakada. Krishna's form, qualities, names, and pastimes are very difficult to understand. But when one begins to chant the holy names of the Lord using his tongue and to engage in chanting taking prasadam, one's senses are purified. And when one's senses are purified, then we can understand who Krishna is. So I was just thinking about these things because I'd read the Krishna book for the umpteenth time and it's fresh in my mind. And Prabhupada very eloquently puts it all there in the last 2 pages of the Krishna book. How everyone should be engaged in devotional service 24/7. Devotee means devotional service. The flood of love of Godhead means the flood of devotional service. The more service that the devotee has, the more wealthy that we become. That is the real wealth of the devotee. It's the wealth of devotional service. So with the Srila Prabhupada marathon coming up, I guess for whatever our capacity allows, everyone should get this opportunity to taste the nectar of how Narada Muni, like this, our previous acharyas, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have engaged us all in trying to give Krishna to others. Yara deke tarika Krishna upadesh, amare agya guru hara thara edesh. This verse is non-different from Savadhama Parityajama Mekam Saram Bhaja. Specifically, actually, it's more important in one sense because Krishna comes to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically to deliver the inhabitants of Kali Yuga. And this is how we surrender to Krishna as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to somehow or other find a way and means to give Krishna to others. And then when we get into it, it's actually quite an amazing feeling because all of a sudden, all the things that I thought were so important, all the things that were giving me so many problems with this person, that person, this devotee, or this situation, another realization I get that actually if you just put others first, then all your problems seem to be very insignificant, especially when you're directly associating with these persons that we meet, the public that we meet. They have so many problems. The problems that they have are inconceivable, and some of them will just tell you straight up on the street, oh, there's someone committed suicide, or I'm suicidal, or I'm anxious, I'm got trauma, this and that and the other. It actually puts into perspective how much we've got, so much wealth as practicing devotees. And you get to appreciate more the temple, you get to appreciate more the sadhu sangha, you get to appreciate more all the gifts that Srila Prabhupada has given us. Because you see firsthand how these people are so deprived from Krishna consciousness, and the result of that, Aidaman Mada Puman, they've just become totally mad after all these Janmaishvara Shribi, all these material hankerings. And in their madness, they can't fully appreciate all the time the association of saintly people. But that's okay. Titikshava Krunika Surada Sarva Dehina Ajata Satrva Shanta Sarva Sadhu Bhushana. Devotee or should become tolerant. Tolerance is a very important quality of the sadhu. Because we can't be tolerant, then how we can be karunika, how we can be compassionate, what to speak of sarva dehinam, how we can become friendly to all living entities. If one cannot tolerate the minor offenses of other living entities, then there's no question of giving them compassion, or no question of being friendly towards them. So if we put ourselves in a situation where we can develop these qualities, then slowly, we can become decorated with these Sarvabhushana, qualify as a real saintly person. So if we engage in compassionate activity, we can also develop compassion in due course of time. If we engage in activities that enable us to develop tolerance, then tolerance will come. So many qualities are there in the Vaishnava once they're engaged seriously in devotional service. Yasasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sabhaguna tatrasamashate suraha. That all the qualities of the devas become realized in the devotee who is fixed, akinchana, fixed in devotional service. So that's our program. This is the program that Srila Prabhupada has given us, 24/7 full engagement and engaging our senses with in the service of the pleasure, for the pleasure of the master of the senses, Rishikesh. And this is how he solved this seeming problem in the Bhagavatam, that Shukadeva Goswami says you should just all go to the forest and leave your family. We can't do that prematurely. So, of course, it's not that Shukadeva Goswami is wrong in saying that. It's just that the material desires in this day and age is just so intense. But the atmosphere in Kali Yuga is just so intense that persons can't always just immediately just give it all up, like Prahlad and Maharaj says and Shukadeva Goswami says. So there has to be a system of immersion, bhakti immersion in devotional service. So one's senses can be purified, and then in due course, we can become detached and renounce from this material world. So this is some of the glories of Narada Muni. Narada Muni can be, as Prabhupada says, accepted as our spiritual master, because he's the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva is the spiritual master of this parampara. And we are trying to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, Sattva Vritte, like Rupa Goswami explains the nectar of instruction. Utsaha Nishya Dharya Tat Tat Karma Bhartana Sattva Vritte, that one must follow in the footsteps, not imitate. There's a difference. Imitation means that, oh, I'm thinking or imagining that I'm already in a platform that I may not be in. Whereas following in the footsteps means I want to accept the instructions of the previous acharyas and the instructions of my spiritual master. Let me have that as my life and soul. As we sing every morning, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Korea Akya. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified for the words emanating from your lotus mouth. So if indeed that is our only wish, then whatever instructions the spiritual master comes through the parampara, that becomes our life and soul, and that becomes our engagement. And by that engagement of devotional service, one can realize and appreciate more the mysteries of Krishna's, how to understand the mysteries of Krishna's pastimes. This is our qualification. As Krishna himself tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad-Gita, this is the only way you can enter the mystery of my understanding. So Narada Muni is exemplary. He is the ancient spaceman. He goes everywhere and everywhere, fully absorbed in Harinam Anukirtanam, chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The glories of Narada Muni is because he's always singing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not just to himself, but he's singing those glories for the benefit of all living entities in all the three worlds. Therefore, he has become the most munificent. Bhuvi grinanti ye buridha janaha. And this is also our inheritance. So everyone has the opportunity, according to whatever capacity we have, whatever ashram they're in, we can try for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada and the pleasure of the parampara. Give everyone opportunity, some access to this most exquisite knowledge. It's amazing when you see someone appreciate Srila Prabhupada's book so much, and they say words of appreciation. I'll just end with one story. Recently, here in the Waikato, in the market, I had met one gentleman, and immediately he was glorifying the Bhagavad-Gita because he had already received a copy of the Bhagavad-Gita. And he was specifically glorifying Prabhupada's purports, how it's changed his whole perspective in life. So much so that this gentleman, he wanted to teach Bhagavad-Gita to his children so it becomes a core fundamental, a foundation for their life. So I said to this gentleman, well, you have so much nice appreciation for Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad-Gita. Do you know what comes after the Bhagavad-Gita? And he shook his head. He didn't know what comes after the Bhagavad-Gita. Well, so I took him to the back of our Sankirtan van, this van, and I showed him the entire set of Srimad Bhagavatam. I told him that this Srimad Bhagavatam is the postgraduate study of the Bhagavad-Gita. The 18 volumes of this book will expand on the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-Gita, and that you can read this Bhagavatam lifetime after lifetime and still not come to the depths of its brilliance and significance and value. And I could see he was just in ecstasy. He was going through the different volumes of the Bhagavatam cantos, looking at all the pictures. And immediately he just fell in love with Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam. And he took the whole set that morning. He gave money for the whole set. So many stories like this, you know, and who knows, maybe this gentleman might not become a full-blown devotee in this lifetime, but what of his children? They'll pick up Bhagavad-Gita, they'll pick up Srimad Bhagavatam, they can become devotees too. So this is the potency of Srila Prabhupada. This is the potency of Srila Prabhupada's books. And this is the potency of Srila Prabhupada's purports. They are his ecstasies. And the more that we relish these ecstasies by reading them and giving others the opportunity to read them, we also get more of Krishna. That's how we get the mercy. And indeed, speaking for myself, I need all the mercy that I can get. This is how we also relish our own hearing and chanting, by giving others opportunity to hear and chant about the names, forms, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kavabir iditam kalmashapaham. This is the life and soul for those suffering in this material world. Tavakatamritam, the nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul. Bhagavatam doesn't mince words. It's the life and soul for those suffering in this material world. And whoever gives this knowledge, they become the most munificent. So, Shri Narada Muni ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And thank you for giving me a little opportunity to purify myself and my 2 cents worth of realization. And I hope you all have a wonderful Prabhupada marathon. I know it's very precarious times with the lockdown, but some of our other devotees are managing to distribute Krishna consciousness in one way, shape, form, or other. It's a good time actually to try and rack our intelligence to figure out how we can give Krishna consciousness to others, because from what I've seen, people have actually become more curious. They've become a little more doubtful about the material situation. Whenever there's some kind of perplexity in the material world, and that's what the material world is there for. It's meant for giving us perplexities, perplexity after perplexity, and that's why Arjuna was put in. He was put in the Bhagavad-Gita. He was put in a state of perplexity. So then he was a very good candidate for hearing Bhagavad-Gita from Krishna. Hare Krishna. It's time up, and I think I've run out of things to say. So thank you very much for your association. I pray for your blessings that I can remain here in the van. We're actually heading down to Wellington in a couple of days. the Brahmacharya ashram has just accumulated a big bus, a 7-meter bus, and it has a 2-ton capacity and it can hold 2 tons worth of books. So with all your blessings, somehow or other, in spite of the environmental circumstance, I pray that we can try and give this knowledge to others for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Pranam, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for giving such a class and inspiring us for the upcoming marathon. Just such an amazing motivation. And you are really representing Narada Muni, distributing knowledge. You are a practical frontline.
Very tiny, very small, Prabhu. Very, very tiny. He can do so much more, actually.
So, Prabhuji, just for us people like working people, how would you say we can distribute books? You know, most people are working like 8 to 9, all this lockdown now. So how can we sort of maximize book distribution?
Because people are working 8 to 9. Sorry, Prabhuji, you were hard to hear.
Okay.
8 to 9 hours.
We're just saying people who are working normally like 8 to 5. How would you suggest they should do book distribution? I mean,
well, you know, the saying goes, if there's a will, there's always a way. There's many different ways, and it doesn't mean that you just have to stand in the street for 8 hours a day. There's so many ways that we can distribute books or give Krishna to others. One way is recently that's quite popular is online distribution. And I'll tell you what now, I know some bhaktas last year, they just bought Bhagavatams and Trade Me. And they just let it sit there. And he sold 2 Bhagavatam sets from Trade Me. Yeah. No one's done any, I'm looking at Trade Me, and no one's got any of Prabhupada's books in there in mass for sale. I mean, anyone can do that. Anyone can put books online and sell them in that way, especially Trade Me. That's one way. That's just, of course, even if it's just a short time throughout in the weekend, maybe even for just 1 hour, you know, we can go out and do something. We may not distribute a lot of books, but I've met a lot of people who have become devotees just for their 1 hour's worth of book distribution on the street. They were thinking, oh, what's the use of this? I can only distribute 1 or 2 books. But those 1 or 2 books that they had distributed, those persons, they become devotees. So there's so many ways we can think of. I mean, I'm not too sure what they do there in Auckland, but I think Bhava Sandi Mataji is spearheading the book distribution there in the temple. And of course, can't remember his name. Yeah, there's so many things that can be arranged. So that's just one thing, online preaching. I haven't thought so much about it because I just stand on the street all day. People ask me what I do. I tell them I'm a street kid. But anyway, I hope that gives you some ideas. But Trade Me is a really good media, Prabhuji, and I've seen devotees sell Bhagavatam sets on Trade Me. So you can even put some up there.
Thank you for a wonderful suggestion. We still got some time. Anybody else want to have some suggestion, comment, question? Please take still some time. Please come forward. Anybody want to?
With your permission, I have to go.
Okay, Prabhuji. Just a short verification. I'll ask Bilamangal Prabhu to just say a few words of appreciation, word of thanks. Bilamangal Prabhu, you there?
Hare Krishna, Hriman Krishna Prabhu. It is amazing experience seeing you giving class from your transcendental van, which is full of Srila Prabhupada's books. You also shared some wonderful realizations, personal realizations when you were distributing these books. Thank you very much for that. It is also fantastic to see that you don't only distribute books, but you really seriously study them, and you are able to share the knowledge that is in the books. So thank you so much. On behalf of all the devotees, Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis here in Auckland and all over New Zealand who are viewing this program, I would like to express my very sincere gratitude and appreciation to you for your time and for your association. Although you are on the move, but you found some time for us. Thank you very much. And I'm sure Srila Prabhupada and your Guru Maharaj is very, very pleased, and you are getting abundance of blessings from them and all the devotees. And we hope to have more of your association in the future, very near future. And thank you once again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. All glories to you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakti. Hriman Krishna Prabhu ki jai, Gaur Bhakti.
Jai.
Next program is Nrsimha